Hey guys, so I wanted to make a video for all of my expository writing students just to kind of walk you through some of the assignments and expectations and policies of this class. So if you have already looked over the materials that have been posted and sent to you so far, so like the Sunday announcement, the syllabus, the weekly schedule, the addendum with additional policies, if you've looked through that stuff, which hopefully you have, then this is going to be review for you. I'm just going to be repeating a lot of that information. But even if you have already looked through all of it, I thought it might be nice to see my face, to hear my voice, and kind of hear my version, my explanation of what Expos is all about and what you should expect. So as I'm going through all of this, I have open our Canvas page, I have the syllabus open, the weekly schedule, the addendum with additional policies. If you want to have that stuff open as well, that might help you to follow along. Before I jump in, I'll also say most students who take expository writing in the spring are coming from basic composition in the fall. I started looking at the getting to know you surveys and the first week writing samples, and it looks like that is the case for most of you, but not all of you. So if you're coming from basic composition, you kind of have a leg up because you're familiar with a lot of these policies and expectations and grading criteria. If you are not coming from basic comp, like you transferred to Rutgers or something like that, never fear. You're qualified to be here too. So reach out to me if you have any questions, if you want any further clarifications about things. You wouldn't be in this class if you weren't ready to be in this class. So again, I'm going to kind of be referring back to some basic comp details because that will apply to most of you. But if it doesn't apply to you, don't panic. You could always reach out to me if you want some clarifications about things that I'm referring to. All right, so as a general overview, Expos is the required writing course for all students at Rutgers. It is actually the only course that every single Rutgers student is required to take, if I'm not mistaken. So the heart of the course is really just writing these 5-page analytic essays. You write 4 of them over the course of the semester, and they are all the same kind of paper. So the readings will change, the prompt question will change, but the grading criteria is always the same, and the expectations, right? The general like structure of the essay and what kind of analysis you should be doing in the body paragraphs, that is consistent across the board. And I think that's one of the really nice things about this class and about basic comp. Since you're writing the same kind of paper over and over again, it gives you that kind of trial and error to really improve on from one paper to the next, right? Whereas in another class, if the first essay and the second essay look totally different, then you're kind of scrambling to learn a totally new skill set every time I throw an essay at you. That is not the case here. So one thing I'd like you to keep in mind is any materials that I make for unit, essay 2 or whatever can also apply to essays 3 and 4. If you get feedback on essay 1, you could apply that to essays 2, 3, and 4 and whatnot. So that's kind of a little taste of it. We'll be reading, I believe, 5 nonfiction pieces throughout the semester. They are not that lengthy, but probably a bit longer than what you read in basic comp. So like say 15 or so pages as a rough estimate. They're all nonfiction, so they'll be about some issues out in the world. I try to pick things that I think are interesting and relevant. And then usually in the second half of the semester, I'll have you guys pick the remaining few readings. So one of the things I asked you in the Getting to Know You survey is, what kinds of things do you want to read about? Do you like to read about? So I'll try to use that when I'm picking these first few texts. Okay, so let me open the syllabus so that I'm not just kind of rambling about random stuff and that there's some organization to what I'm saying. When you open the syllabus, you'll see my contact information up at the top. That's important. If you ever need me, email is the quickest, easiest way to reach me. I try to be pretty quick with responses. Right now, office hours says TBD, to be determined. If you saw in the Sunday announcement that went out, I'm asking you guys to fill out a meeting availability survey. So to let me know times that you are or are not available to meet via video. And then once I have all those responses in by Friday night this week, then I will use that to make a schedule of when I'll be holding office hours, when I'll be holding optional video meetings. I thought that made sense because I didn't want to like pick a random time and then have it be the case that a bunch of you were not available at that time. So fill out that meeting availability survey, and then by next week, probably by your next weekly announcement, you'll see when those office hours, when those video meetings will be. All of those meetings, by the way, will be on Zoom, and the links are already available to you on Canvas. There is a required text for this class. So the New Humanities Reader, 6th edition, this is from 2019. You could get a hard copy of it. I believe there are electronic copies of it. This is the 2019 version, so there should be used copies of it floating around, whether from people who took it last semester or anytime last year. So I'm going to post our first reading, but then readings 2 through 5, it's going to be your job to get a hold of this text somehow. I do encourage you to get the 6th edition published in 2019, because if you get a different edition, even if some of the texts overlap, which they may not, but even if some of the texts overlap, the page numbers won't overlap, and then that'll get you into issues when it comes to like guided reading questions, class discussions, citing evidence in your essays. It'll be much easier, much more streamlined if you can get a hold of this version. So get that book as soon as you can. Course requirements. Again, this is coming from the syllabus. So there's a first week writing sample, which you already have. Some of you have already completed and handed in. Thank you. Basically, this is just a chance for me to get a sense of the skill set you're coming in with. It's a chance to double check any potential placement issues. So if you write a really weak sample that makes me think, maybe this person should have taken basic comp if they haven't, or what have you, then it gives us a chance early on to clear up any of those issues. So make sure you do it. Make sure you put in some effort. It's also a nice introduction to text 1, because the passage that I pulled in the writing sample is a passage from our first text that we're going to be reading and talking about and writing about. So that's basically like you could consider it like pass fail. If you do it in earnest, honest effort, it shows a reasonable, appropriate skill level, then you are good to go. It doesn't matter. It doesn't get graded like A, B, C, D like that. 75% of your grade comes from the analytic essays. So that's the 4 essays that you're going to write throughout the class. They are all 5 pages long, and they will all be synthesizing either 2 or 3 texts that we read together and talk about together as a class. So that is the bulk of your grade. We're not going to get to that first essay for probably like 2 or so weeks. So when we get closer to it, then I'll go over the grading criteria. Again, if you're coming from basic comp, it's the same exact rubric. So that's kind of nice. It'll be familiar to you. For anyone not familiar with basic comp, the grades on those essays will be A, B+, B, C+, C, or not passing. So a C is going to be the lowest passing essay grade and the lowest passing final grade in this class. There are no D's in Expos. So again, we'll go over that more when we get there. So those are the 5-page essays, synthesizing and analyzing assigned texts. In addition to the 4 essays, we do 2 interpretive exercises. So the textual analysis exercise, which is the prompt is already posted, the submission links are already open for you. So if you're a go-getter, you can start looking that over and getting started. And then at the very end, after we've written all the essays, you'll do something called a final interpretive exercise. These are graded slightly differently. So there's a different rubric that is already up on Canvas. It's not ABC, it's high pass, pass, low pass, or no pass. And your grades on these 2 wind up being 10% of your final course grade. You're not required to pass them, so it kind of allows some room to stumble. You can not pass the textual analysis exercise and still pass the class, as long as the numbers, average out to a C or better. So you have to do the interpretive exercises. You don't necessarily have to pass them. Online participation is going to be 15% of your grade. So the way I'm going to track participation is pretty straightforward. If there is some assignment or activity on a day with a deadline and you do the activity by that deadline, then you get 100 for participation. If you don't do it at all, you get a 0 for participation. If you do it but it's late, or you do it but it's incomplete, or there's like some issue like that, then I'll enter it as a 50. And there's going to be lots of those throughout the semester. I'm trying my best to like make it take the place of a regular in-person semester. So in a regular in-person semester, we would meet twice a week. So my goal is to give like 2 of those participation activities each week. So that's an average of about 30 of those participation grades. I'm going to keep them in a spreadsheet that'll get submitted to the department as like an official grade book. So feel free to check in with me throughout the semester to get a sense of what that participation average is looking like. But honestly, you should know what that participation average looks like, right? You know if you're doing the assignments or if you're not. And again, that should be like a pretty easy category that everybody could excel on. The papers can be tricky. Maybe those interpretive exercises are tricky. But the participation activities are just based on completion, based on participation. So they're not graded for quality. As long as you do them, you submit them on time, you show an honest effort, they're almost counting as like your attendance to class, right? So that is all of the assignments. One thing that I forgot to mention about the analytic essays, and again, if you are coming from basic comp, this will sound familiar. That 75% of your grade is not a raw average of the 4 essays. Rather, it's based on the best grades you get on those essays. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of this once you start developing an average, once you get some grades back. But if there are 4 essays, you could think of it as like that 75% of your grade is going to come from your 2 best essays. So that means potentially somebody could not pass paper 1, not pass paper 2 even. And then if papers 3 and 4 are a C+ and a B, then that final part of that final grade, that 75%, is going to come from the average of that C+ and that B. It's not going to be based on the worst essays you write. It's going to be based on the best essays you write. So keep that in mind, especially if you kind of stumble a little bit early on. The grading system is designed to allow you to do that. Okay. More about grading in the syllabus. As I said, we will talk more about that once we get to the first essay. So I'm going to close out the syllabus. You could read through the rest. It's like policies, links to different resources you might need. If you haven't looked over the weekly schedule yet, take a chance to do that. It doesn't have specific deadlines in just yet, but it does give you like a week to week. Here's when we'll be drafting paper 1. Here's when the final draft of paper 1 will happen. Here's when we're moving into unit 2. So take a look. It's a bit of a fast-paced course. All we're doing is reading texts, talking about them, drafting a paper, peer review, revision, hand in the paper, start over. New text, talk about it, draft the paper. So again, for my basic comp students, it's kind of like basic comp, but without the quizzes, right? It's like if basic comp was all about just like back-to-back banging out essays. Again, I think it's kind of nice. I think those quizzes can be a little bit tedious. They do tend to cushion grades a little bit though. So if your essay writing kind of took a back seat last semester, you'll just have to make sure it takes a front seat this semester. Your grade really, really is going to come from how you do on those essays, and then it'll be rounded out by how actively you're participating in the class. Other policies to be aware of. So this is now coming from the document called addendum. I have a category called personal responsibility, which basically just gives you a little mini lecture about you're an adult, I'm an adult, you're choosing to take this class. I'm going to be accountable for the promises I make you, whether it's, how quickly I'm going to get things returned with feedback, or how I'm going to calculate your grade, or anything like that. I'm going to hold myself accountable to all of those promises, and I'm going to hope and assume that you will also hold yourself accountable to your end of the deal. So you have all of the policies, you have all of the information. Yes, I understand we are all humans, so you are entitled to stumble now and again. You are entitled to make mistakes, but I do ask that you own up to them, and that we don't get into issues of like arguing about excuses, to put it bluntly, right? If you ever have questions about a policy, if you ever want me to clarify what I mean by some rule or some penalty or whatever, just reach out to me, okay? And I'm happy to clarify, to explain any of that stuff. Take advantage of the resources available to you. So there will be video meetings, there will be office hours, there will be writing tutoring if you want to take advantage of any of that. I always say I have a lot more sympathy for the person who is doing all of those things than for the student who comes to me and is like, I'm doing really poorly on the essays. And I'm like, well, where have you been during the meetings? Where have you been during the office hours? Are you getting tutoring? So if at any point you find yourself struggling, or even if you're not struggling and you just want to make sure you don't get into that situation, make sure you are taking advantage of all of these resources. Be proactive. Read the announcements carefully, read directions carefully, reach out if you have questions, and that'll put you in a much better position to be successful, and it'll earn you more respect, right? If we do get into a situation where you need some additional help or something like that. Participation we talked about already. Late papers. So the short version of this is don't hand papers in late. It's a really surefire way to reduce your average in this class. So if a final draft is submitted late, it loses a full letter grade for each day it's late. And as I briefly mentioned before, there are only a few grades, right? There's an A, a B+, a B, a C+, a C, and then non-passing. So if you are at a C+, which is a respectable place to be, right? That is a slightly above average paper, right? 75 of this is a C, if we're being honest. If you're at a C+ and you hand something in a day late, that bumps you all the way down to not passing. If you're at a B, which is a good grade, that would bump you down to a C, right? Don't let that happen. And for rough drafts, again, we're going to do rough and final drafts of every paper. Rough drafts, if you submit it late, it would be minus half a letter grade. So if it's at a C+, it would bump it to a C. If it's at a B, it would bump it down to a C+, things like that. So again, these are like totally avoidable reasons for losing credit. You want to be graded on the quality of your work, not on like the fact that you handed it in an hour late, or the fact that you didn't read directions closely or something like that. Don't let it happen. Please be careful. There will always be minimum required lengths on every prompt. So it'll say like this should be at least 500 words in length. That's how long the textual analysis exercise should be, I believe. Or for the essays, like this should be 5 full pages in MLA format. Those will always be minimum required lengths, right? It means at least 5 full pages. So that means if you hand in something that's 4.5 pages, or that's like 4 full pages with a couple lines onto the 5th page or something like that, then you haven't met the bare minimum requirement. Therefore, I'm not going to accept that paper, right? I'm not going to accept that assignment. What I'll do is I'll email you, I'll say, hey, this doesn't meet the minimum requirement. You need to finish this and resubmit it. And then that new submission would get graded as a late submission. So again, totally avoidable way of losing credit. Don't let it happen. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Extensions. I do allow extensions. If you are busy and you would be able to do better on an assignment if you had more time, then I hope you will ask for an extension, right? The policy is simple. I ask that you request it 48 hours or more before the deadline. So I will handle this as fairly and consistently as I always have. If it is 48 hours or more before a deadline and you ask for more time, I will say, sure, no problem. How much more time do you need? If it is less than 48 hours before a deadline, I will say, no, I'm sorry. This is the policy. And that's regardless of reason, regardless of excuse. You don't have to tell me any excuse. Just say, hey, can I get 2 more days to work on this rough draft? Or even, hey, can I get an extra week to work on this final draft? If you ask for that extra time ahead of time, then that shows me that you're being proactive, you're planning accordingly, you're kind of taking your education into your own hands. And that is something that I applaud. That's something I respect. If you're reaching out to me 2 days after something was due and you've already missed the deadline, now things are a little bit dicier, right? That shows me in many cases that you weren't planning accordingly, right? So I always tell students, don't just look at what's going on this week, take a peek at what's going on next week, the week after, make yourself a little calendar, a little schedule to know when your deadlines are for various classes. And if you have 3 major things due on the same day, reach out to your professors early. Stagger those due dates so that you can make things more manageable, and so that you could do more quality work. Tracking your grade. So there is a grade book visible to you on Canvas. I would say don't pay too much attention to it. So the grade book is not going to have any of our participation grades. The grade book is also not going to take into account how we get that analytic essay portion of your grade. So I mentioned before that we don't actually factor in your lowest essays, whereas Canvas will be factoring those in. I'm not entering all the participation grades, so Canvas won't be factoring those in. You have the grading breakdown of how much each category is worth, how much each assignment is worth, and you'll always get graded assignments returned to you. So really, you should be able to track your grade on your own. I will be tracking your grade. If at any point in the semester you want to check in and say, hey, I think my average is somewhere around here. Does that match up with your records? Then I will tell you if that matches up with my records. So yeah, don't give too much credence to the grade book on Canvas. As far as our schedule this semester, I'm saying that I'm going to be available during like regular business hours, Monday through Friday, somewhere between like 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. for my own sanity. I'm going to try to stay away from school stuff during evenings and on the weekends. I encourage you to do the same if you can realistically do that. I'm gonna schedule our office hours and any optional class meetings on Mondays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays. Again, I'm gonna decide on those specific times based on the meeting availability survey. But Tuesdays and Fridays, I'll still be around, so you could still email me at any of those times and I will get back to you pretty quickly. I always say allow about a week for me to grade more minor assignments, so like a rough draft with feedback or something like that. And then allow more like 2 weeks for a final draft to be graded and returned with the feedback. Okay, one final note on that addendum is about time zones. So all of our deadlines in this class are going to be in Eastern Standard Time, which if we were physically at Rutgers, New Brunswick, that would be the time zone we were working with. If you are in a different time zone because you're in a different part of the United States or even out of the country, which some of our classmates are, it's up to you to do the proper time conversions. So while I do empathize with that being kind of an extra hurdle for you, it's a necessary part of remote learning. So make sure you have some kind of time zone converter that you know if something's due by 11:59 p.m. in Eastern Standard Time, that you're getting it in by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have questions about time zones or conversions, you could reach out to me and I'll try to clear some of that up for you. Is there anything else before I close this out? I guess I'll say a quick word about Canvas itself, because I think every professor uses Canvas and organizes Canvas a little bit differently. For this class, I'm going to say the only place you really need to be on Canvas is the modules page. So when you open up our course site, our homepage, our like main page should just be modules. The top module right now is called General Course Information. Below that is Unit 1, the textual analysis exercise. Once we finish that, it'll say Unit 2, Essay 1, something like that. And then I'll post all relevant documents basically in chronological order. So if you start at the top of the page and scroll down, you should eventually see where we are in the semester. I'll try to label things as clearly as possible. Use that page. You shouldn't really have to be clicking around on the left toolbar, like going into assignments or going into discussions. I will always link them directly on that modules page. So use that. The only other thing I kind of mentioned in passing before, I will be sending out a weekly announcement every week on Sunday morning or sometime on Sunday. That'll give you a preview of what's to come for that week, you know, when our deadlines are, how you're going to be earning your participation credit that week. So make sure you have your settings in Canvas set up so that those announcements are going to your Rutgers email. And definitely make sure you are reading those closely. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but make sure you're reaching out if you have any questions, if you need any clarification. Okay, so I think that's it. I rambled for way too long, so thank you if you're still with me. Keep an eye out for this upcoming Sunday announcement. Once I see those meeting availability results, I'll put together a schedule with office hours, with some optional video meetings for you all. And I look forward to working with you and hopefully seeing some of your faces, hearing some of your voices in those video meetings next week and for the rest of the semester. All right, thanks guys.